Lake Cargelligo sits quietly in central western New South Wales, surrounded by vast stretches of agricultural land. It is a tight-knit regional community where residents know the streets by heart and major violent crime is practically non-existent. That peace fractured on the afternoon of January 22, 2026, when emergency dispatchers received sudden reports of gunfire echoing through the residential roads. When local officers arrived, they quickly realized they were not dealing with an isolated dispute. There were multiple victims, bleeding and critically injured, spread across two distinct locations. The suspected gunman, a 37-year-old local man named Julian Ingram, was gone. By the time emergency perimeters were established, he had completely vanished from the area. The town's extreme isolation now created a state of lockdown. With an armed suspect unaccounted for, the vast distances that usually defined the region's quiet life now acted as a physical barrier, keeping residents confined while police searched for a killer who could be anywhere within the local perimeter. The violence began around 4:30 p.m. Police were first called to Bocara Street, where they found a 32-year-old man and a 25-year-old woman suffering from fatal gunshot wounds inside a vehicle. The woman was pregnant. Before investigators could even begin to secure the vehicle, calls came in directing police to a second scene on nearby Walker Street. There, officers found two more victims. A 50-year-old woman was pronounced dead at the scene, and a 19-year-old man was rushed to the hospital with critical gunshot injuries. With the casualty count mounting, standard patrols shifted into a full emergency response. Residential streets were cordoned off behind heavy police tape, placing the center of town on strict lockdown. Forensic units arrived to begin processing the evidence, but documenting two separate, outdoor homicide scenes simultaneously requires enormous logistical coordination, an effort made significantly harder knowing the perpetrator was still on the move. The sheer brutality of the attacks and the rapid movement between targets forced local authorities to pivot immediately, escalating their response to launch one of the largest and most extensive emergency manhunts in the region's recent history. New South Wales Police established Strike Force Doberta. This operation brought in specialized tactical units, detectives, and state resources to manage the sprawling, multi-victim investigation. The tactical objective quickly shifted. Instead of simply securing the crime scenes, officers had to project a search outward, pushing into the surrounding rural expanse to intercept the suspect before he could establish a lead. Authorities set up a tight perimeter, concentrating the search grid directly around Lake Cargelligo. But as hours turned into days without a confirmed sighting, investigators widened that net. The search area expanded exponentially, covering thousands of square kilometers. The failure to locate a vehicle in the opening window of the investigation forced a total recalculation of resources. The opportunity for a rapid tactical capture had closed, committing the strike force to a long-term, large-scale deployment that would last for months. The primary obstacle for Strike Force Doberta was the terrain itself, vast stretches of flat red dirt and scrub extending endlessly to the horizon. This landscape is crisscrossed by an extensive network of unsealed, off-the-grid dirt tracks. These routes allow a fugitive to bypass main thoroughfares and easily avoid established police roadblocks. Even from the air, the environment is hostile to a search. Dense, impenetrable walls of eucalyptus trees and thick brush create near-zero visibility from above, rendering standard helicopter operations largely ineffective. The massive distances between regional communities also compound the problem. Out here, there are virtually no civilians around to report a passing car, spot a suspicious campfire, or notice an abandoned vehicle. This placed a heavy burden on the investigators. Over the course of months, ground teams had to physically track down and verify every distant tire mark, piece of debris, and unconfirmed sighting. The harsh Australian geography effectively acted as a shield for the suspect. The vastness of the outback swallowed Julian Ingram entirely, stalling the pursuit of justice and leaving investigators searching in the dark. As this map shows, the critical break in the case finally came on May 11, 2026. Police received a tip about an abandoned vehicle deep inside the Roundhill Nature Reserve, located approximately 100 kilometers away from Lake Cargelligo. When officers navigated the rugged, forested hillsides of the reserve to reach the car, they found a grim scene. Lying on the ground beside the vehicle was the body of a man. 2 days later, following initial forensic checks, New South Wales Police made a formal announcement. The remains were officially identified as 37-year-old Julian Ingram. With the suspect dead, the active manhunt was over. The case immediately pivoted back into a static forensic investigation, as detectives seized firearms from the site and awaited a post-mortem examination. A report is now being prepared for the coroner, who must answer a series of unresolved questions. How exactly did Ingram navigate to this remote reserve? How did he die? And how long had his body been lying there while police scoured the state? The discovery in the bushland marks the end of the physical search, but it cannot undo the violence of January 22nd. 3 people were killed, a pregnant woman among them, and a young man was left with critical injuries. The community of Lake Cargelligo is left to rebuild, living with a permanent loss and questions that may never be fully answered.